Everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David. I've been searching the interzones for some more science, space, and tech news to share with you. And I came across this over at Sputnik International. Yes, China's Chang'e 6 set to return to Earth with Moon's far side samples. This should be really interesting. As I say, I did a video which I've linked below this one. So you can check out the actual landing itself. It's really interesting. I did a video on that too. And as I say, leave the link for the main article below the video so you can pop in and check out the embedded links that are in these articles. See if you want to go for a bit of a deeper dive. Makes for a very interesting read, believe me. Yes, Chang'e is named after the moon goddess in Chinese mythology. This is China's 6th mission to the moon. Now, China's Chang'e 6 probe is officially making its return journey back to Earth after leaving the far side of the moon, China's National Space Agency announced on Tuesday. Well done, Chinese scientists, and to the Chinese Communist government. Don't like you very much, but Chinese scientists, big thumbs up. Fantastic stuff. State media says the probe of the Chang'e 6 craft lifted off at about 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday, 7:38 a.m. on Tuesday, or 23:38 Greenwich Mean Time Monday, and started its journey back. Now, the probe completed its sample collection from June 2nd to the 3rd, possibly making China the first country to return samples from the far side of the moon. Now, the probe landed in the moon on Sunday. It's one of the oldest craters on the moon, the South Pole Aitken, or SPA, and then spent 2 days gathering rock and soil samples using its drill and robotic arm. Yeah, it was quite fascinating. I've done a couple of videos on this where the previous American and Russian probes, the soil samples that they brought back were much older than the Chinese ones. Yeah, because Chinese ones are much younger. And of course, that was really blowing people's minds for a while, and they couldn't figure out why. Well, it was simply a case of, the regolith gets churned up every time a meteorite hits it, or, whatever, a big space rock hits it. I'm not a scientist. I don't know about this stuff, but I do know that when it hit it, it churned it all up and then, buried it. So the older stuff, some of the older stuff comes to the surface, and some of the younger stuff is mixed in with the older stuff, and the older stuff the younger stuff gets a bit lower. It's all sort of churned up and mixed around. But the Chinese have found some really young stuff, so it's really interesting. And the Russians and the Americans found the older regolith. It's amazing. As I say, not a scientist. Any astrogeologists there, any astrophysicists, astronomers, anyone like that, feel free to comment, because we'd love to hear from you. It'd be absolutely amazing. When the probe successfully completed its mission, the Chinese national flag carried by the lander was unfurled for the first time on the far side of the moon, the China National Space Administration, the CNSA, said. However, the container carrying the sample still needs to be transferred to a re-entry capsule that will then land in the deserts of China's Inner Mongolia region later this month. Now, this is a very important achievement, said Professor Martin Barstow of the University of Leicester. Only the US and Russia have recovered samples from the moon, landing and then taking off again. It demonstrates an impressive capability in China's space program. It is a technical feat to take off from the moon at all, but even more challenging when carried out on its far side. Now, the far side of the moon, or the dark side, is the section which faces away from Earth. The moon's far side and near side were once thought to be relatively similar, but scientific missions by robotic observers and Apollo astronauts in the last 6 decades have found the two sides featured are actually very different. It's interesting. The moon's far side has less craters caused by volcanic activity on the moon, for instance. Interesting. I did a video, which I'll link again below here. We found there was a hole. The American, I think it's the American one, or was it the European Space Agency? Again, feel free to refresh my memory. The orbiter that's going around Mars, taking photos of it. They found a hole in the surface of Mars, and they believe, like a circular, just literally circular, and they believe it's a collapsed lava tube, and it could possibly be used as a shelter from, volcanic activity that's, no longer active on Mars. But it's possible it could be used as a temporary shelter while we're setting up if we ever we get a colony on Mars. The volcanic activity on the moon, if there are some sort of these lava tubes, I was wondering, excuse me, I was wondering if they could possibly be used as a temporary shelter to escape the radiation that would be on the moon, that we know that's there for anyone who wants to settle there to start with, while we're building whatever we build, whatever base we build up there. It should be very interesting, though. I'll put the link to that below this video, too. The far side is challenging to study due to its distance and difficult terrain. Experts believe the probe's samples could provide unprecedented insights into the moon's far side, as well as the formation and evolution of the moon and the solar system, and maybe even provide clues as to how Earth came to sustain life. I do not know if they have any plans for sharing samples outside China, but I hope they have, and that we in the UK would get the opportunity to work on these. This would fit very well with our plans for a sample return from Mars, said Barstow. Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting indeed. As I said, I'm not a scientist, but I cannot wait to find some of the results from these. If the Chinese will share it with the rest of the world, that would be absolutely incredible. Just like, bringing samples back from Mars. I did another video, which I'll also link. We found some meteorites that originated from Mars and were ejected from the surface and landed on Earth. Very similar in a way to the old panspermia theory, where life could have come from Earth from the necessary chemicals and the minerals and chemicals and whatever else it takes. Again, not a scientist, not a biologist, whatever the building blocks of life were, with panspermia and having them, ejected through space and onto Earth from asteroids or other planets. Similar theory, apparently. These chunks of meteorite originated from the planet Mars. So it's very, very interesting indeed. Can't wait to see what happens with these Chinese far side of the moon samples from the soil. Be fantastic. All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. If you're up for it, drop a comment down below the video, because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care, and as I always say, if you can't be good at it. And as I also always say,
I'll be back.